Lauren asks, I would love to hear you do a lecture series on raising children properly. Is that something you would consider? Well, in my new book, I've written a chapter on that called Don't Let Your Children Do Anything That Makes You Dislike Them. And I've laid out I've laid out a philosophy of care and discipline that's predicated partly on a French philosophical legal notion, which is do not multiply rules beyond necessity. It's sort of like a legal equivalent to Occam's razor. And an English common law principle which is use minimal necessary force. And I think the union of those two, which is don't have too many rules, but make sure that you properly enforce the ones that you do have, is a good start for how you might consider your attitude with regards to raising children. The other thing you have to figure out is exactly what's your aim. And, one of the aims that people have had most recently, pushed by clueless psychologists, I would say, is that you want children to have high self-esteem. And that's actually a large part trait neuroticism anyways. And it can be modified to some degree. Jerome Kagan has done some very interesting work on that. But the best thing to do, I think the best thing to orient yourself towards with regards to children is that you're trying to make your children, or help your children to be delightful in the eyes of others. And so that means they have to be reasonably well socialized, and that really takes place between the ages of 2 and 4, because what you want for your children is that when they go out into public, when they're away from you, or even with you for that matter, what you want for your children is for other people to genuinely like them. Because if they behave reasonably and they attend properly to adults and they know how to play with other children, then wherever they go, they're going to be, unless they encounter someone truly malevolent, they're going to be welcomed with smiles and open arms. And that's not going to be fake, because almost every human being actually likes children if they're reasonably behaved. And so your job is to make your children highly socially desirable, because that opens up the world to them. So that's not a lecture series, but it's a little lecture. Looking at myself honestly, John says, I'm deeply envious and resentful of others' happiness. How do I turn this around? Well, John, I would say you've started to turn it around already, because you have at least come to the conclusion that you're deeply envious and resentful of others' happiness, so you have the damn problem diagnosed. So one of the things you might do is figure out what you would like instead. Like, how would you like to feel about the world? Because you're implying that being deeply envious and resentful isn't for the best. So let's assume that you would rather be pleased about other people's successes and not envious. Well, the first thing you might think is, well, maybe you have to do some writing, or at least some thinking. It's like, maybe the alternative would be to be happy about others' success and happiness. Well, maybe you should start by thinking about why you might be happy about their happiness. It's not like happiness is a zero-sum game. It's not, and believe me, I'm taking your question seriously, and I think that what you're saying characterizes plenty of people, and I think that you're being deeply honest noticing it. Happiness isn't a zero-sum game, Lots of people can be happy at the same time. And do you really want to live in a world where other people are less happy? In what possible manner would that be useful and good for you in the medium to long term? It might make you feel, grudgingly satisfied, in a dark way temporarily, but it's not a very good long-term strategy. So I would say you got to think it through. How is it that you would like to view the world? How do you think that would be best for you? I mean, as if you were taking care of yourself, like you're someone who deserves to be taken care of. Think about how you'd like to have the world, how you'd like to view the world. And one of the ways you can do that too is to think about some people that you admire and try to figure out how they look at the world, or even ask them, because maybe then you can find out what it is about your thought patterns that are driving you down this sort of dark road. So Why are you now, Francois St. Ange asks, why are you now hiding the amount you receive from Patreon? I found it very motivating to see the amount skyrocket and felt glad to be part of this as if you were an artist. I now feel more like I'm buying a product and I find it less appealing. Yeah, well, it's one of those things where I'm kind of damned if I do and damned if I don't, you know, and I don't know what's correct. I guess I probably got tired of the sort of more left-leaning, let's say radical left-leaning press people jumping up and down on me every chance they got because people were donating money for services that I particularly that I render essentially for free. There must have been 10 articles in the last week following the Lindsay Shepherd incident, pointing out that I'm somehow being manipulative and evil in a capitalist sort of way for daring to allow people to donate money to help support what I'm doing. And it gets kind of tiring. And so, I don't know, I guess I also thought that maybe there's a part of it that's like, well, I wouldn't exactly call it bragging, but because it's not, but that's about good enough. I mean, it was an appeal to privacy, I suppose, in part two. I don't know if it's the right thing. I could do a poll on Twitter and find out, I guess. I did that for some other things this week. So anyways, that's the answer to that.